So we just finished our information on the northern humanist known as Erasmus, and I hope that you saw, of course, the characteristic of wanting to reform the church with his writing. The next example of a northern humanist is going to focus his work on how to improve society, and that humanist is Thomas More. So let's get the information down on letter C of your typed outline with Thomas More. We can see here that he is a civic humanist, prime example of a civic humanist. He's also very Catholic, and he rose to the highest government position of any humanist. To give you a specific detail about that, he was given the position Lord Chancellor to Henry VIII, King Henry VIII of England. So you can't get higher than being Lord Chancellor when you are working for a king. That is a top position and high honor. More's humanistic masterpiece, make no mistake of this, is Utopia. We know with Utopia, it's reflecting More's own concerns with the economic and political problems of the day. So what he did was it's a mix of civic humanism and religious idealism in describing the perfect society, which of course in his writing, Utopia, was located on an imaginary island. So in More's work, Utopia, he is pointing out the accumulation of property as a root cause for society's ills. We know that a utopian society is based on communal ownership rather than private property, where everybody is going to share in what takes place. So what he's also saying is that society is not properly organized. So until the problems are addressed, people are going to suffer. He sees rich buying up property and raising rent on the poor. Again, this is just an example of, one of the problems in society. And according to More, in order to achieve harmony and order, people have to be willing to sacrifice their individual rights for the common good. So not everyone might not agree with him. Not everyone's going to agree with him, but this is what he believed needs to take place to get harmony and order. In his, perfect society, war, poverty, religious intolerance, and other problems do not exist. So we see with this writing of More that he is clearly wanting to improve society. So that's what we can learn by reading Utopia. We have one more example of a northern humanist to take a look at before we move on to the Northern Renaissance art. Remember, the focus of humanism are writings, okay? And next we're going to look at the art. So our final northern humanist in this section is Juan Louis, and he is a Spanish humanist who studied areas of education and psychology. We know that he was admired by Erasmus and More, and he believed the state had a responsibility to help those in poverty. So this is another example of a northern humanist writer who's focusing on improving society. Erasmus stands out from these other two examples because his focus was reforming the church, whereas More and Vives, they focus more of their writings on improving society. So make sure you realize that when you are studying these specific examples of northern humanist writers. So this is the typed outline we're going to use for section 6 on the Northern Renaissance art. So make sure, again, you either have this printed out or you've jotted this information down to refer to as we go through the recorded PowerPoint. We're actually going to begin with the location of this Northern Renaissance art. So where it says here Flemish style, you're going to write some of this information that you see here. The Flemish style is going to be located in the Low Countries, and make sure you put that Low Countries, for example, would be the Netherlands and present day Belgium, as well as Luxembourg. Now, those countries didn't exist back in the 1500s, but if you were to look at a map where Belgium and Luxembourg are, which are next to the Netherlands, that is what they refer to as the Low Countries. So if you're Flemish, then you are from those particular areas. The Netherlands, Belgium, later down the road, Luxembourg is kind of carved out of that. The characteristics for these Northern Renaissance artists, they are heavily influenced by the Italian Renaissance. So don't think that they're completely different from what we went over with the Italian Renaissance artists. There's a lot of influence from the Italian Renaissance in this Northern Renaissance art. You're going to see more detailed paintings compared to the Italian Renaissance, especially the background. You might want to add that. When it comes to the detail in paintings, you're going to especially see this in the background. You're also going to see the use of oil paints, and that's in contrast to the Italian Renaissance artists that used tempera. Okay, like Da Vinci, for example, used that. So these Northern Renaissance artists, they are going to use oils. And there's, of course, the disadvantage with using oil is that it's going to take a lot longer to dry. If you're outdoors, it might speed up the process. On your little d, there's more emotion than the Italian style when you look at these paintings, and you'll see some examples when we move on. The works are often preoccupied with death. So that's another characteristic of these Flemish artists that we're going to take a look at. So more emotion, and this subject matter preoccupied with death is going to be very evident. So there are two Flemish painters that we're going to take a look at for example. Your first one, Juan van Eyck, and he is considered the most famous and innovative Flemish painter of the 15th century. We know that he perfected oil paintings. Again, you'll see some of his work in a minute. The naturalistic wood panel paintings used much religious symbolism. So he often used this wood paneling when he would paint. And again, you can see you're going to have religious symbolism evident. Two of his well-known works that I'm going to show you what they look like in a moment. The Ghent altarpiece, which was featured book, which was later made into a movie, The Monuments Men. If y'all have ever heard of that or read the book or seen the movie about during World War II, when the Nazis were looting and destroying a lot of the artwork of the time. This was one of the pieces that they stole, and fortunately it was recovered. So it's called the Ghent altarpiece. Another one of Eyck's works is Arnold Feeney and His Wife. That is the title of the painting. And again, I'll show you both of these works here in just a moment. As you can see here, here is the Ghent altarpiece. This picture does not do it justice. I believe it's in 3 separate pieces when it is not all put together. And like I said, luckily, the Monuments Men during World War II were able to recover this stolen piece from the Nazis. This is Eyck's famous painting titled Arnold Feeney and His Wife. And as you can see in this painting, the two are having a wedding ceremony. You might be able to tell with this close-up image details of the mirror that there is someone officiating the wedding. And you can see a couple of things that are evident in the painting that tells us about these individuals. Because of their clothing, you can see that they are of wealth. He is wearing a very nice fur coat, which if you had money, then you could definitely afford such clothing. Her clothing is layered here, so you can see because of the amount of material used that she is also from a wealthy family. No, she is not pregnant. It's just she's holding up her dress because it is so much material to the dress. So she's just holding it up, and it bunched up like this makes it look or appear that she's pregnant. But all the research I've done, she is not. Also want to point out a couple of symbols. So some symbolism was used in this painting. The dog symbolizes fidelity. It's usually a symbol of, someone who is faithful. So someone who is faithful. And we clearly can conclude that they're getting married, and so therefore they are faithful to one another. You can also see here on this little stand or table is fruit. The specific fruit in the bowl is what they believe to be oranges, and oranges were very expensive to import in Europe at this time. So once again, that could symbolize the wealth of these two individuals as they're coming together in marriage, but it also could be a sign of fertility, again, believing that they will be able to have children. I don't know if you can tell, but back here at the very back wall of the painting, you have Eyck's signature. So he did sign it. Not all artists would sign their work at the time. And there are just many other things that we could spend, hours, talking about the painting itself and all the different characteristics within the painting. But it is a well-known work of Eyck that you definitely need to be familiar with. The last example of a Flemish artist that I want to go over with you is Peter Bruegel, the Elder. I'm going to start going over his material in the next video because I am running out of time on this one, and I want to make sure that I'm very thorough with his work specifically because sometimes you'll see his works on AP exams. So I definitely want to make sure we spend time going over him as an artist and his work.